The room where nothing moves. You'd think it would be peaceful, but silence can scream it, can gnaw at the edge of your sanity until every breath feels like it echoes in a cave you can't escape. There are moments when the room is still frozen in time, yet your mind is sprinting. You sit there, motionless but inside. Chaos, conversations from last week, regrets from last year, fantasies about tomorrow, fears that haven't even happened. You replay it all like a cursed symphony on loop, one that never ends, never slows, never gives you the mercy of silence. Irony, isn't it? The silence outside grows so loud, it drowns out every voice but your own, and that voice, it isn't kind, it doesn't comfort, it doesn't heal, it interrogates, it accuses, it drags you back into the storm of things you thought you buried. You stare at the wall, at the ceiling, at nothing, and yet you're watching a whole world collapse inside your skull. And no one sees it. They think you're fine. They think you're calm. They call you strong. Because you don't scream. Because you don't cry. Because you've mastered the art of pretending that the noise doesn't eat you alive, but inside, you are breaking over and over and over in absolute silence. They don't see what they're doing to you, but you feel every fracture every moment. You're overlooked. You collapse inward every time they speak over you. Your voice retreats a little more. Every "I'm fine" is a quiet surrender. Every nod, every smile, every "it's okay" is a lie you learned to perform to survive. This world never asked how. You were it, only asked you to behave, to be digestible, palatable, easy to be around. So you gave them peace. Even when you were chaos, you gave them quiet, even when you were screaming inside. But tell me, who gives that to you? Who sits in silence just to understand your storm? Who listens without trying to fix you? Who lets you unravel without trying to stitch you back into something they can admire? No one? Then listen closely. That ache you feel, that suffocating stillness, that's not weakness, that's your truth knocking. It's your shadow, it's your grief. It's the rage you never let surface, it's the loneliness you tried to reason away. It's the voice you buried to keep them comfortable. But here's the thing about silence: it may hold you for a while, but eventually it starts to rot, and you begin to rot with it. The things you never said, the feelings you never felt, the questions you never asked, they become ghosts, haunting every room you walk into. So no, this silence isn't peaceful, it's not healing, it's prison. Dressed in stillness, and you've been sitting in that prison for far too long. But I see you, I see the way you carry yourself, heavy but upright. I see how you nod when you want to scream. I see the courage it takes to just stay awake, up, to keep breathing, to keep hoping. You think no one notices. I don't. More importantly, you do. You notice every moment you abandon yourself just to be accepted. You notice every time you shrink so they can feel tall. You notice how your silence has become your safety and your cage. But let me tell you something that may sting. You weren't born to be quiet. You weren't born to play small. You weren't born to keep others comfortable while you suffocate. You were born to roar. And if they can't handle your noise, let them leave, let them go, let them be devoured by the very silence they demanded from you. Because now, it's time for you to make noise, not for them, not for their approval, but for you. Your silence has said enough. Now let your voice begin. The mind that runs while the body stays still. You ever wonder how exhaustion works? Not the kind that hits your muscles, not the kind you fix with sleep. I mean the kind that grips your bones, the kind that hollows you out even when you haven't moved an inch. That's the overthinker's fatigue. It's not about doing too much, it's about never stopping inside. It's when your body stays frozen, but your mind sprints. Every hour, every minute, every breath. You sit still in a chair, but your thoughts are running marathons across memories you wish you could erase, futures that haven't even happened, and every version of yourself you're scared to meet. You review conversations, you rewrite them, you edit your own personality in real time, rehearsing every word before it leaves your lips as if one wrong sentence could end everything. You calculate facial expressions, you measure pauses, you Scan for disappointment like it's a landmine waiting to blow, and still, they say you're too sensitive. They say, stop overreacting. But they don't understand that you're not reacting to them. You're reacting to everything you've ever been told not to feel. You learn to analyze because the world punished you for being impulsive. You learn to plan every move because your pain was once used against you. So now, you live in preparation, you live in mental rehearsals, you live in the loop, and the loop is relentless because it doesn't just ask what if. It screams. What if they're mad at me? What if I said the wrong thing? What if I fail? What if I leave? What if I'm not enough? What if I never was? And every what if becomes a chain. Every doubt becomes a cage. You try to breathe, but the thoughts won't let you. You try to rest, but your mind says, not yet, we haven't solved it all. You scroll, you clean, you distract, but no matter what you do, you can't outrun yourself. And here's the cruelest part. You start thinking that thinking itself is the only thing keeping you safe. You believe that if you just think hard enough, long enough, deeply enough, you'll finally feel peace. But peace never comes. Because peace isn't built through avoidance, it's found in surrender. And you're terrified of surrender because somewhere along the line you learned that letting go means falling, that silence means danger, that stillness means something bad is about to happen. So you keep thinking, keep spiraling, keep dissecting every feeling, like it's a puzzle you're supposed to solve instead of something you're allowed to feel. But what if I told you this? Your mind isn't broken, it's brilliant. It built this entire mechanism to protect you. It studied your pain and built a map around it. But you've been following that same map for years, and it only leads you in circles. You think you're moving forward, but really, you're just running laps around old fears, and you're tired. God, you're tired. But here's the moment you've been avoiding, the truth you don't want to face. You don't need to solve everything. You don't need to think you're way into being loved. You don't need to earn peace by exhaustion. You just need to stop running, to pause, to listen to the noise, to stare it in the face and say, I hear you, I see you, but you're not in charge anymore. Because you are not your thoughts, you are the one witnessing them, and that is your power. That's the space where freedom begins. But to claim it, you have to let go of the need to control everything. You have to be willing to not know. You have to stop living in a world built out of maybes and start standing in the now, this moment, raw, uncertain, unfiltered. Mask, no script, no perfect answer, just breath, just presence, just existence. And maybe for the first time, stillness that doesn't scream, but speaks softly, truthfully, powerfully, because underneath the endless noise of your mind, there's a whisper you haven't heard in years. You're allowed to rest, you're allowed to stop, you allowed to just be. You don't owe the world an explanation for your silence, and you don't need its permission to reclaim your voice. The loop only ends when you say it does. So look at it now, acknowledge the thoughts, honor the mind that tried to save you, but understand this. You are not here to think yourself to death. You are here to live the safe house of the mind. You ever wonder why you live up here in your head? Why you've built an entire kingdom behind your eyes? Walled in with thought, guarded by logic, locked away from the chaos outside? I'll tell you why, because there was a time the outside wasn't safe, a time when speaking up got you silence in return, a time when feeling too much made you too much, a time when every mistake was punishment, every tear a weakness, every dream an inconvenience. So you retreated, you turned inwards, not because it was easy, but because it was the only place you had left. Your mind became your safe house, not a home, a bunker, not peace, protection. And in that bunker, you survived. You learned to predict every outcome so you could avoid pain. You studied people like a chessboard, not to win, but to not lose. You analyzed conversations to decode danger, not connection. You stayed 5 steps ahead because the moment you let your guard down, the world reminded you why you built walls in the first place, and you were praised for it. They called you mature for your age, smart, wise beyond your years. They didn't see the price, didn't hear the silence you swallowed every Time your heart wanted to scream, didn't feel the tension in your shoulders from carrying everyone else's expectations, did notice how loud your mind had to be. Just to keep the real you from slipping through the cracks, you became your own jailer and savior, locking yourself in with thoughts, but convincing yourself it was freedom. But here's the twist you never saw coming. The walls that kept others out kept you in that safety. It turned to stagnation, that sharp mind. It became a cage of overanalysis, preparation. It stopped you from ever actually beginning, because when your mind is your only safe place, you forget how to live outside of it. You mistrust joy. You second-guess peace. You sabotage beginnings, because endings feel more familiar. And love, you run from it not because you don't want it, but because you're terrified of what it might uncover, because love sees past the mask. Love doesn't play chess. It just arrives unannounced and polished, unpredictable, and you don't know how to hold what you didn't prepare for, so you stay in your mind, your castle, your cage, your curated battlefield. But listen to me. You weren't born to be at war with yourself, weren't built to live behind blue light and bulletproof glass. You weren't created to rehearse life, you were meant to feel it. Even the messy parts, especially the messy parts, because somewhere along the way, you mistook control for safety. You believed that if you just thought hard enough, planned far enough, you'd never get hurt again. But pain doesn't knock first. It walks in uninvited, just like joy, just like growth, just like the truth. And if your first instinct is to lock the door every time something real approaches, you'll never know what it feels like to be seen, really seen. For how well you hide your flaws, but for how deeply you've survived them. Not for how well you perform strength, but for how honestly you admit you're tired. So here's the challenge. What if your mind wasn't your only safe house? What if your body could be one too? Your breath, your voice, your heartbeat. What if instead of living in loops, you stepped into presence? What if you gave yourself permission to be not perfect, not prepared, but human? Because you're not broken, you're cautious, you're not cold, you're guarded. You're not lost, you've just been navigating with fear instead of trust. But now you're waking up now. You see that safety is no longer about hiding. It's about choosing where to stand, even when your voice trembles. It's about showing up even when your past tells you to disappear. It's about believing, even when belief feels like a risk. So go ahead, step outside your head, even if it's just for a second. Say the thing before it's perfect. Feel the thing before it's explained. The thing before you've thought of every consequence. The world may not be safe, but you can be to yourself. You can be the place where pain is welcomed, not feared, where emotions are allowed, not dissected, where silence isn't a scream but a breath. Because if your mind was a fortress, let your body be a temple. Let your soul be a battlefield, but one where you fight for yourself, not against. And maybe, just maybe, you'll realize that your greatest safety was never in control. It was in compassion, and your most powerful weapon. Not your mind, but your willingness to live unguarded, even for a moment. When thought becomes a prison, they said, think before you speak. So I thought and thought until thought was no longer a tool, it was a trap. You see, nobody tells you where overthinking begins. It doesn't arrive with fanfare, it doesn't scream, it whispers. It starts with care, with caution, with the need to get it right, and then it never lets go. You start questioning your instincts, then your choices, then your memories, and finally yourself. And by the time you realize what's happened, the prison has already formed, built brick by brick, with every what if, every I shouldn't have said that, every maybe they didn't mean it that way. You become both inmate and architect, and the worst part? No one sees the cell because you're still functioning. You show up, you smile, you speak when spoken to, you laugh at the right moments, you nod along to conversations, while your mind rewinds every word, replays every gesture, reanalyzes every silence. They don't see the war inside. They don't see the second guessing, the imaginary arguments, the rehearsed apologies, the spirals. Oh, the spirals, they start small, a single awkward pause, a forgotten text, a glance that lasted too long or not long enough, and suddenly, You're deep in the loop. You can't breathe. You can't think of anything else. You can't get out because your mind has made a habit out of overprotecting you, and it will sacrifice your peace to keep you from feeling powerless again. But here's what nobody wants to admit. Overthinking isn't thinking too much, it's feeling too much. And trying to outrun it. You don't overthink because you're confused. You overthink because you're afraid to trust your own body, afraid to let something go, afraid to be wrong again. You've mistaken preparation for protection, mistaken analysis for control, mistaken control for safety. But here's the truth, and it might hurt. You are not free, you are obedient to a system. You're nervous system built during chaos. You are loyal to patterns you never consented to, and now the very mind that tried to save you is the one holding you hostage. It tells you if you plan just a little more, you'll finally be ready. If you apologize one more time, they'll finally understand. If you replay it again, you'll finally feel peace. But peace doesn't come from repetition. It comes from release. It comes when you stop trying to rewrite a past that refuses to change. It comes when you stop arguing with ghosts, and maybe you're finally ready for that. Ready to realize that thinking won't save you from feeling, that logic can't replace grief, that control doesn't erase memory. You are not here to perform perfection. You are not here to apologize for your depth. You are not here to analyze yourself into worthiness. You are here to live even if your voice shakes, even if your mind resists, even if fear tries to pull you back in, because fear is clever. It knows you won't listen if it screams, so it disguises itself as wisdom, as responsibility, as caution. But it's not caution. It's self-doubt in a better outfit. You don't need more answers. You need more presence. You don't need to rehearse. You need to risk. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be real. And I know what you're thinking. It's not that easy, and you're right, but it's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be real, raw, messy, alive. And alive doesn't mean safe. Alive means uncertain. Alive means feeling it all, the ache, the joy, the regret. The alive means stepping out of the cage you built from thought. Alive means letting go before you feel ready. So here's your mirror, the version of you that's trapped in your mind. It's not the full story, it's the you. Echo, the rehearsal, the shadow, the real you. The real you is waiting outside the loop, waiting in the silence between thoughts, waiting in the stillness after the spiral, waiting for you to stop thinking long enough to finally listen. Because thought unchecked becomes torment, but thought aligned with truth becomes power. Not the power to control outcomes, the power to accept them, to trust yourself even when nothing makes sense, to speak your truth even when it shakes, to feel what you feel without turning it into a strategy. That's where the real rebellion begins. That's when you stop playing defense and start living offense, when you stop rehearsing and start becoming. So ask yourself, who would you be without the loop? Who are you when the thoughts stop spinning? Who are you when the mind steps aside and the soul steps forward? That's the version of you the world has never met, and it's time to stop mistaking safety for stillness time, to stop mistaking silence for peacetime, to stop mistaking overthinking for awareness. Your prison is not the thought, it's your belief in it. Break that belief and you break the walls, the fear beneath the noise. They say fear is a response. I say fear is a strategy, clever, silent, disguised. It doesn't come to you with claws and teeth. It doesn't growl. It doesn't roar. It whispers, just loud enough to make you pause, just soft enough to sound like logic. You call it being careful, you call it being smart, but deep down, you know that fear has taken the shape of your voice and begun to speak for you. That's the reason you don't send that message, the reason you rewrite that post 10 times before deleting it, the reason you hesitate at the edge of a dream and then convince yourself it wasn't your dream at all. Fear wears many masks. It shows up as perfectionism, as hesitation, as politeness, as analysis. But underneath the masks, there's one truth. You are afraid to be seen, not the version of you you show the world, polished, careful, curated. The real youth, one who feels too much, thinks too deeply, loves too hard, burns too bright. That One who remembers what it was like to be rejected, to be told you were too intense, too sensitive, too different. So you started shrinking, you made yourself smaller, quieter, easier to digest. You learned to blend in, to read the room before you read yourself, to give what they wanted even if it cost you everything. And now, you don't even realize that fear has become your compass. You trust it more than your dreams, more than your gut, more than your soul. But let me ask you this. What if fear is lying to you? What if the thoughts that keep you stuck aren't signs of truth, but scars of past wounds? What if your mind is still protecting a version of you that no longer needs protection? You think overthinking is a flaw. It's not. It's evidence proof that your nervous system remembers pain, shame, rejection, betrayal, and so it does what it was trained to do. It overanalyzes, subverts, controls in the name of safety. But here's the problem. Safety became isolation, preparation became paralysis, and the voice in your head, the one you think is yours, it's fear wearing your accent, using your memories, pretending to be your reason. But you know what fear can't do? It can't dream it, can't feel joy, it can't love with its whole chest, it can't stand up, look life in the eyes and say, "This is who I am," take it or fall beneath it. Only you can do that. Only the version of you that exists beyond the noise, because fear thrives in overthinking. It feeds on your doubt, it grows in the pause between idea and action. But courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving even with fear clawing at your ankles. Courage is saying yes while your mind screams wait. Courage is being misunderstood and standing tall anyway, because the world doesn't change when you're understood. The world changes when you become undeniable, and that doesn't happen inside the loop. That doesn't happen when you obey every anxious thought like it's prophecy. That doesn't happen when fear is your default language. That only happens when you stop asking fear for permission to be yourself. Let me say that again. Stop asking fear for permission. It's never going to say yes. It will always give you a reason to wake, to hide, to shrink, and the longer you listen, the louder it gets, until you forget there was ever another voice inside you, a voice that said, "I want more. I'm not done. I was made for more than this performance." That voice, that's not fear. That's your truth buried under years of surviving, suffocating under the weight of be careful, and be perfect, and be acceptable. But the truth is getting louder now. Can you feel it? The ache in your chest that says, "I can't do this anymore." That's not weakness, that's awakening. That's the sound of the armor cracking. And yes, it's terrifying, because when the noise stops, the silence begins, and silence isn't empty. Silence holds every emotion you've locked away, the rage you never spoke, the grief you never allowed, the desires you told yourself were too much. But listen to me. You don't have to fear the silence, you have to enter it, because what you find there is not madness, it's not weakness, it's the version of you that never asked to be caged, version of you that remembers how to feel, how to fight, how to become. Fear will try to pull you back. It will say, "Don't risk it." It will whisper, "What if they leave?" It will shout, "You're not ready." But fear has no imagination, only memory, and memory is not prophecy. So stop letting it write your story. You are not your fear, you are not your patterns, you are not the voice that taught you to survive. You are the fire that outlived the cold. You are the storm that never stopped spinning. You are the warrior that fear could not kill. And now you don't need fear's approval, you need its silence, because you've heard it speak long enough. Now it's your turn, your voice, your power, your story spoken without apology, lived without explanation. This is not the end of fear. It never truly ends, but it's the end of obedience from here forward. Fear walks beside you, but it never leads, not again. The shadow self remembers. They tried to erase me with silence, with shame, with every sideways glance that told me to sit down. Stay small, speak softer. They didn't have to scream it, they taught it in quiet, in absence, in cold stares, in expectations that felt more like handcuffs than guidance. But you know what they forgot? Shadows don't disappear. They wait, they learn. They can bury the chaos. You can silence the rage. You can dress your wounds in perfection and call it healing. But the shadow never forgets, and now it's awake, the part of you that you abandoned. To survive, it's still here, waiting in the dark, not to punish you, but to remind you of what you are. Because what if the parts you're ashamed of aren't shameful at all? What if the rage was righteous? What if the sadness was sacred? What if the chaos was never broken, just misnamed? They told you to be calm. You were called too reactive. They told you to be agreeable. You were called too defiant. They told you to be likable. You were called too much, but too much for who? Too real for what? You see, the world doesn't reject you for being wrong. It rejects you for being awake in a place that profits off your numbness. But your shadow, your fire, it doesn't care about their comfort. It cares about your wholeness, and wholeness requires war not with others, but with the version of yourself that made peace with chains. There was a time you betrayed yourself just to be accepted, smiled when you wanted to scream, agreed when your soul begged you to disagree, folded when you should have stood. But that version of you, that was survival. You did what you had to do, but now you're awake. Now you hear the voice beneath the voice, the whisper that says, I remember when we stopped being honest. I remember when we started lying to fit. I remember when we killed off pieces of ourselves just to feel safe. And now you can't unknow it. You can't go back, because the shadow self, the buried, banned, brilliant part of you is knocking, not to destroy you, to resurrect you. It's the you that cried out for truth when everyone else demanded performance. It's the you that still wants more, even after years of being told to settle. It's the you that is not polite, not digestible, not marketable, but powerful. The you that speaks without flinching. The you that says, if I have to lose you to keep me, then goodbye. The you that refuses to apologize for existing fully. Because listen to me, and hear this as prophecy. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a force to be reckoned with, and reckoning requires the whole truth, not just the parts that are easy to love, but the raw, the ugly, the glorious, the shadow. You don't have to be light all the time. You don't have to smile through fire. You don't have to water yourself down for anyone who's never tasted depth. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be undeniables. Bring your shadows, bring your edge, bring the anger you were told to quiet, bring the sorrow you were told to ignore, bring the hunger, yes, the hunger that still lives in your bones, because your darkness is not a flaw, it's a compass. It shows you where you were hurt. It shows you what you need. It shows you who you are when the mask's fallen. Those who fear it were never meant to walk beside it. You don't have to make your shadow palatable. You just have to make it seen. Because the moment you stop hiding, you start healing, and walk beside it. You don't have to make your shadow palatable. You just have to make it seen. Because the moment you stop hiding, you start healing, and healing doesn't always look like light. Sometimes it looks like fire. Sometimes it looks like fury. Sometimes it looks like standing in the mirror and finally saying, I'm not broken, I'm becoming. You see, the shadow self doesn't want revenge. It wants reunion. It wants your voice back. It wants your boundaries back. It wants the moment you stopped pretending and started choosing. You choosing truth. Choosing the version of you that doesn't flinch, doesn't apologize, doesn't shrink. And when you choose that, you become terrifying to the world that once convinced you to stay small. You become everything they hoped you'd never remember. Because now you don't just carry light, you carry fire now. You don't just reflect truth, you command it. And the shadow, it doesn't haunt you anymore. It walks with you, not as a wound, but as a weapon. You are whole now, not because you silenced your demons, but because you let them speak and they said, we are not your enemies, we are your edge. Use us. They won't see it coming because it's not loud, it's not rage, not vengeance, not violence. It's quieter than that. It's the fire behind the eyes, a gaze that doesn't blink anymore, a stare that doesn't seek approval, doesn't flinch, doesn't explain it, just sees clearly, coldly, unapologetically. And that is what terrifies them. Not your voice, not your fists, But your clarity, they mocked your silence once, mistook your stillness for submission, but now? Now they feel the heat rising from a soul that no longer hides in the dark. You've stopped explaining yourself, stopped watering down your thoughts for their comfort now. You just look at them, and they feel it, that unspoken truth, that pressure, that realization that something inside you has changed, and it's never going back. They can sense it in the way you move now, deliberate, unhurried, grounded like a storm before it breaks. They can feel it in your absence. Even when you're in the room, you've outgrown the conversations, the performance, the pretending. You don't chase validation anymore. You don't need them to understand you, because power doesn't scream, it watches, it waits, and when the time is right, it rises. You are no longer the one sitting quietly, hoping to be heard. You are the storm they didn't prepare for. You are the reckoning they never saw coming, and you don't need to prove a thing. Let them underestimate you. Let them talk. Let them project their fears, their fragility, their smallness onto you. You've learned the truth. What they say about you has more to do with their limits than your potential. What they think of you is none of your business anymore. You've spent too long dimming your brilliance to make them feel safe now. You let it burn. You let it blind you. Let it become the warning in your walk, the thunder in your silence. And when they ask what changed, you'll say nothing, because the fire didn't arrive. It was always there. They just weren't ready to feel it. But now they have no choice, because you no longer hide it behind politeness. You no longer bury it under shame. You wear it in your posture, in your breath, in your refusal to break. You've become the kind of power that doesn't need permission, the kind of strength that makes others question their own, not by force, but by presence, by showing up fully, fiercely unafraid. The fire behind your eyes is not rage, it's truth. It's knowing who you are. Even when they try to forget, it's choosing yourself over and over until the world catches up. And when it doesn't, you keep walking, because the path ahead is yours now, lit by every spark they tried to smother. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be felt, and whether they praise you or fear you, they will never forget you. Let the fire speak. Let the silence burn. Let the world feel the weight of what you've become, because this is no longer a story of survival. This is the beginning of your rise. Let them watch, let them wonder, but know this: you are already gone beyond their reach, above their expectations, and the fire behind your eyes, it doesn't seek revenge, it seeks rebirth. This is it, the final breath before the break, the final stillness before the shift. This is the moment you've felt coming for years, the moment you've dodged, delayed, diluted, until now you can feel it rising, that truth you've buried under logic and laughter, that hunger you've tried to feed with praise and performance, that storm inside you that never settled, and now you're done running. You stand here on the edge of who you were, and you know, to become, you must let something die: the people pleaser, the apologizer, the overanalyzer, the one who played small so they wouldn't feel threatened, the one who swallowed rage just to be called kind, the one who dimmed brilliance in the name of harmony. Let them die. Let every mask slip. Let every false identity dissolve in the flame of who you really are. This is not a breakdown. This is a breakthrough. You are not falling apart. You are being reforged. This pain, this pressure, it's not your enemy. It's your initiation. You are not the wound. You are the weapon that rose from it. And yes, this moment feels heavy. Yes, this silence is deafening, because this is the breath before transformation. One final inhale of everything they told you to be. One final exhale of everything you've chosen to become. You are not just healing, you are erupting. You are no longer asking the world for permission to exist. You are giving yourself permission to evolve. This isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were never broken. You were bound, and now you unchain. You were muted, and now you roar without even raising your voice, because the loudest shift is often the quietest one. The moment you stop performing and start becoming. And becoming, it doesn't always look glorious. It looks like grief. It looks like solitude. It looks like standing in the ashes of your former self and smiling anyway, because you finally see it. You were never meant to be understood by a world addicted to shallowness. You were never meant to fit a mold built by people afraid of their own depth. You were born for more depth. More fire, more truth, and now, you breathe that in one last time. Let it fill your lungs, not fear, not shame, but resolve, because when you exhale everything changes. This is the final breath before you become. Not who they expected, not who they molded, but who you were always meant to be. Storm that walks, the truth that burns, the fire they couldn't tame. Take that breath now. Become. Not everything needs to go viral, but if this deserves to be seen, help it get there. Like it, subscribe, so more depth.